Good evening. The presidency is the most powerful office in the world. It's an office that not only tests your judgment, perhaps even more importantly, it's an office that can test your character. Because you not only face moments when you need the courage to exercise the full power of the presidency, you also face moments where you need the wisdom to respect the limits of the power of the office of the presidency.
That was President Biden addressing the nation after one of the most horrifying decisions ever in the history of the Supreme Court. And this is D9 from the Pardon the Insurrection podcast, coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee, courtesy of none other than Tennessee Brando. Let's give it up for my guy. He's out here killing it. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And I'm sure that you're all aware by now that the Supreme Court has made a terrible decision, a horrifying decision to rip democracy out from under us and install us into a monarchy, the very thing that the founding fathers feared when they set up the country and established three branches of the federal government as sort of a check and balance on each of the other branches. That balance has been thrown out of whack now that a president has nearly unlimited immunity when it pertains to the actions that he takes as an official part of his job as the president, whether those actions be legal or otherwise. I mean, it's a horrifying decision. I won't sugarcoat it for you. It's not quite the worst case scenario, but the only way it could get worse from here is if Trump is reelected president of the United States and has the power to do the things that he's told us that he has in store for us. But before I let Joe Biden take it away, just wanted to take a moment to just address a few of your concerns. I know after the presidential debate, I'm sure you've seen the outrage from the collective outrage from the media here going on and on about Joe Biden's fitness for office, not understanding that obviously he was clearly under the weather, probably took some cold medicine, was a little drowsy here and there, probably needed a nap. Me personally, I'm not willing to throw out what little left we have of our democracy because our president needed to take a nap. And clearly, if you've seen some of the clips from the post-debate where he was speaking in front of a crowd, he was perfectly fine, as well as the next day when he held a rally and he freaking crushed it. I mean, he knocked it out of the park.
I give you my word as a Biden, I would not be running again if I didn't believe with all my heart and soul I can do this job. Because quite frankly, the stakes are too high. The stakes are too high. Donald Trump is a genuine threat to this nation. He's a threat to our freedom. He's a threat to our democracy. He's literally a threat for everything America stands for. Look,
even here in this address, short though it may be, President Biden shows that he's adept at laying out the extraordinary stakes involved in the 2024 election and what could happen should we fail to reelect him and instead lose our democracy to a second Trump administration. But where, unlike the first, he'll be armed with unlimited immunity for any actions that he decides he wants to take. And I know, like, if you take a look around at the state of affairs in the political landscape, it seems as though all of the cards are stacked against us, right? The Supreme Court clearly in the bag for Trump, in the bag for autocracy, along with the Republicans in Congress. And even the media appears to be in the bag for Trump. They're doing everything in their power to get Biden to step down in order to create chaos and conflict in the Democratic Party so they can have a feeding frenzy before the election in order to boost their ratings. And even the former Republicans, the never Trumpers who seem to have made their way into the Democratic Party, are doing their best to make sure that the party ends up in chaos by attempting to get President Biden to step down. A clearly insane reaction to an instance where a president needed a nap, as opposed to pooling their efforts into making sure that we don't lose our democracies and our freedom. But if they won't do the job, that's what you have us for. And I know over the next 4 months, it's going to be extraordinarily difficult, but it won't be impossible. We can get this done. We can make this happen. Don't give up hope. Don't panic. Don't fret. Just prepare, get to work, and make sure that we save ourselves because no one else is going to save us. And before I let President Biden take it away, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And also, if you could, follow me on my personal podcast, Pardon the Insurrection, available everywhere podcasts are found, including here on YouTube. And here's your newly anointed King Joseph R. Biden I.
This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent, because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president alone. This decision today has continued the court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation, from gutting voting rights and civil rights, to taking away a woman's right to choose, to today's decision that undermines the rule of law of this nation. Nearly 4 years ago, my predecessor sent a violent mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. We all saw it with our own eyes. We sat there and watched it happen that day. Attack on the police, the ransacking at the Capitol, a mob literally hunting down the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it's one of the darkest days in the history of America. Now the man who sent that mob to the U.S. Capitol is facing potential criminal conviction for what happened that day. And the American people deserve to have an answer in the courts before the upcoming election. The public has a right to know the answer about what happened on January 6th before they are asked to vote again this year. Now, because of today's decision, that is highly, highly unlikely. It's a terrible disservice to the people of this nation. So now the American people will have to do what the courts should have been willing to do, but will not. The American people have to render a judgment about Donald Trump's behavior. The American people must decide whether Donald Trump's assault on our democracy on January 6th makes him unfit for public office in the highest office in the land. The American people must decide if Trump's embrace of violence to preserve his power is acceptable. Perhaps most importantly, the American people must decide if they want to entrust the president once again, the presidency, to Donald Trump, now knowing he'll be even more emboldened to do whatever he pleases whenever he wants to do it. You know, at the outset of our nation, it was the character of George Washington, our first president, to define the presidency. He believed power was limited, not absolute, and that power always resides with the people, always. Now, over 200 years later, with today's Supreme Court decision, once again, it will depend on the character of the men and women who hold that presidency that are going to define the limits of the power of the presidency, because the law will no longer do it. I know I will respect the limits of the presidential powers I have for 3.5 years, but any president, including Donald Trump, will now be free to ignore the law. I concur with Justice Sotomayor's dissent today. Here's what she said. She said, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. End of quote. So should the American people dissent. I dissent. May God bless you all, and may God help preserve our democracy. Thank you. And may God protect our troops.